Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today for the Who's Your Data presentation from CU Online. I'm Sean Renner, I'm an academic technology coordinator at CU Online, and I'm joined by Brendan Getz, who is our data manager here at CU Online. So today we're just going to take you through a quick overview of some of the analytics tools that are available to you in Canvas and give you some ideas of how you can use those tools to see how your students are interacting in your course and find ways to engage those students. So I'm going to hand it over to Brendan, who's going to tell us a little bit about what analytics is, a little bit about what he does, and show us those tools.
Cool, thanks, Sean. Yes, I just wanted to kick this off by talking sort of conceptually about what analytics is and sort of why we're looking at this in terms of Canvas. And so when we talk about analytics, we're not just talking about data or about descriptive statistics or simply about facts. We're looking more at finding actionable insight from information. So I can look at a course and say, well, we have this many students. But that's not, analytics doesn't stop there. Analytics continues and says, okay, well, what are we going to do with that information? What are we going to do with the fact that we know we have 20 students? Maybe that's a high number, maybe that's a low number, depending on the department or the time of year or the type of course. And so knowing, hey, we have 20 students, that's not as much as we're looking for. So we're going to do something about that, maybe increase marketing, maybe look at when students are enrolling for courses, what times of day they prefer to take courses, things like that. So kind of that whole process from starting with the fact and moving through some insight from that fact and then taking action on that is really the whole analytics process. And so as we're looking at the analytics available in Canvas for instructors, we're looking at it really through the lens of, okay, what can I do with this information? We're going to show you some cool data that is available. And then our hope is that you'll be able to think, okay, what can I do with this information? Maybe I can redesign my course structure. Maybe I can see that students are looking at this piece of information or this piece of content in the course and not this other piece. So maybe I'll get rid of this other piece. Maybe you'll say, okay, now I know how to reach out to students that are struggling or reach out to students that are doing well and give them some accolades. That's kind of the route that we're going with this. And then so before we hop into the actual course shell, I'll just point out that the good analytics usually raises good questions. It doesn't always raise good answers. And so that's the really exciting bit, is that it's a very investigative process. So with that, we're going to hop out of here and hop into this online skills mastery course from February of this year. And so hopefully this looks familiar, just the homepage of this.
Just as a note, before we start, some folks, if you're watching this, you may have taken this course, you maybe were in this section. We've changed the names of everybody in here, so the data that you're looking at, you're not going to be actually seeing anyone's real grades or information attached to their names. So just to make sure you guys are aware of that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sean. Thanks for sharing that. We did want to get into a real course where there was some actual activity, because that's really where the heart of all this data lies. But we were very mindful to maintain some anonymity and privacy, so we're not disclosing anything that we shouldn't be disclosing. So there are really about 6 general areas in the course where you have access to some of the analytics tools. The first one is here on the right side of the screen in course analytics. So we're going to start there. And you'll see that I get these nice visualizations that pop up just to give you an overview of what's on the page before I go through it a little bit more. We've got activity by date, submissions, grades, and then all the way down at the bottom here, some information on individual students. So I'll start at the top, and I'm just gonna kind of walk through what this is telling us really quickly, and then talk a little bit about some things that might be useful, like what can I do with this information? And so with activity by date, we're looking at page views and we're looking at participation in this particular course. And so page view is when somebody goes to a page in the course, and it sort of registers for each student, for each page that they go to. And then a participation is measuring anytime a student engages with the material on the course. And the way Canvas measures that is looking at assignment submissions, discussion posts, taken tests or quizzes. Those are a few of the main categories. It doesn't get every possible way that a student can engage with the course. And so just because a page view registers, meaning that a student went to, say, the assignment page, it doesn't mean that they actually read the entire page. So it's just something to keep in mind, that this is helpful information. It can start to give us some ideas of what students are looking at and how they're engaging, but it's not sort of a flawless measure of engagement. And so as I look at this, you can see that we've got the time of year on the x-axis on the bottom here, and then these bars, blue are bars, or the darker blue, I guess, are bars where you've got both participations and page views for that particular day. Whereas if I go over one of these lighter bars, we only have page views, and that means that no students participated that day. And so if you just take a look at this, you can kind of see the rising and the falling of that. And so as we start to think about, okay, what can I do with this information? I might look at this and say, okay, like, where are these taller dates? It looks like there are a lot of participations and page views February 1st and 2nd. And so I might look at that and think, okay, I might go cross-check it against my calendar. What days of the week are those? What days do I have assignments due? Is it consistent? Are all these taller bars on Mondays and Tuesdays, for example, which I think they are, at least most of them. And so I might be able to use that as an instructor to maybe structure my workload or prepare, knowing that a lot of students are going to be in the course on Monday and Tuesday. And so maybe Mondays and Tuesdays are a good time for me to be available to answer questions, or know that my workload might be a little bit heavier on this. And similarly, recognizing sort of about my expectations for students, looking at some of these lower periods. If I see these trends that students are engaging more on one day than another day, I might have assignments due that sort of corresponds with that. So that's activity by date. Then we can move down here and look at submissions. And so this is for assignments, quizzes, surveys, things like that. And so each one of these sort of columns or bars is a particular assignment or submission, like I said, a quiz, discussion. And you get a really quick overview of how much of those submissions were on time, late, or missing. And that's what I really like about this. And so you can see that early on in the course, these first couple things that were due, most people were submitting things on time. And without really doing much digging at all, I can see that we start to get a few more late assignments. I can see that this red here, somebody, 5.9% of the assignments are missing. And it looks like the number of late and missing things kind of grows throughout the semester or the term. So I might look at that and be like, what's going on? Why is that? I can drill down later and see who these missing assignments are from. If I see another pattern, I've looked at another course where there was this really distinct pattern where most things were coming in on time, but then there were these chunks with late assignments. So I would see something kind of like this, where I have this one right here, where there are a lot more late than there were in the previous one. And so I might look at that. These two due dates are a week apart. But what I was noticing in the other course was that this one right here was usually a quiz or an exam, something that maybe carried a little heavier weight in the student's eyes. actually, let me rephrase that. This one would have been the quiz or the exam where everything was coming in on time. And then adjacent to it with a similar due date, maybe the same day or a day after, there was a lot of late assignments. And so that suggested to me that maybe when I had two, or in that course when there were two assignments or quizzes that were due at about the same time, that clearly one of them was a priority in the student's eyes. One was getting done and one was kind of consistently late. And so I would step back and think a little bit about what I would do about that. We'll keep moving on, looking down at grades here. Again, this is on the sort of assignment level or quiz level. So each one of these columns is a particular item. You know, here we have week 1 quiz. I can go over here and look at design a content page. That was probably an assignment. And so the whole length, this vertical line that's going, is the total range of scores. And so you can see in this little pop-up, the high score was 50, the low was 0. And that's why it goes all the way down to the bottom. And then it gives us the median as well. And so you get some basic descriptive statistics for all the grades, again, in a nice visual format. And so I can look at this and see that for a lot of these assignments, you know, students were getting full points, and that maybe, you know, based on looking up at submissions, there was one student who wasn't turning something in, and so that's why it goes all the way down to 0. And I might use this to get a sense of where students are struggling. You know, so in this particular assignment where everybody's getting full points, people are doing well, but then on this assignment over here, that thicker blue bar is capturing sort of the 25th to 75th percentile scores. So it's the range of students that scored somewhere in the middle, not full points, not 0. And you can see that there's a bigger range here. And so to me, that's an indicator that things were spread out more across the class. And it might mean that students didn't understand the material. It might mean that there were more late submissions. And so maybe they got docked points. Again, not necessarily giving me the answer, but I look at this and see, oh, compared to everything else in this course, there's a big range of scores. So I'm going to look in a little bit to that and see why that might be. Now we can hop
Hey,
down.
can I jump in for just 1 second too?
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
And just make a real quick note that in that grades tool there, when you are grading assignments that are unsubmitted in the Canvas gradebook, you're going to be putting those in as a 0, obviously. Just to kind of reiterate what Brendan was just saying about like that particular assignment that has that 25th to 75th percentile, giving you, that's more of an indicator of students struggling than one of those ones maybe to the left of it where you see it still has a large total range, but when he hovers over it, you know, that median is 50 because pretty much every student did well on it. The reason that the range is so high though is because maybe there's that one student that got a 0 just because they didn't turn it in. So that's part of the reason why that, you know, that dark blue bar with the 25th to 75th percentile is a better indicator of those students struggling, because these other ones can still have this huge range of scores, what looks like a huge range of scores, but is really just maybe set that way because there's that one student that got a 0 because they didn't turn it in.
Cool, thanks, Sean. And so now is where we can start to look at individual students a little bit more. You know, again, we've got page views and participations, the number of submissions, and of those submissions, how many were on time, how many were late, how many were missing. And then you've got the current score over here. And so you can sort by this. And so I just sorted low to high, so I can really quickly just get a quick glance at who is not doing so well in the course. And that might be an indicator to me to reach out and message them. Similarly, if I sort top to bottom, you can see that our very own Sean Renner is getting 100% in the course. And so I might want to reach out to Sean or some of these other people and say, hey, nice job. I see you're doing well. Keep it up, something like that.
And one quick note about this, when we changed these names, we realized that it erased the page view and participation data for these users. It didn't erase the submission or grading data, but it did clear out the page view and participation data, which is why these people all have zeros.
0 page views. Yeah, so as you log into your own courses, take a look. Like obviously your data will be different, and maybe raise some different questions. And so if I'm curious about Sean in particular, I can click on his name, and I get similar views here with specific activity just for Sean. And so as Sean just mentioned, a lot of his participation is gone just because it was erased. But you would see bars going across here for participation and page views. You can see a nice visualization of the communication between the instructor and the student. And so these little blue bubbles here, every message that the instructor sends that particular student sees. It might be a group message. It doesn't include announcements. These are part of the message features. But if you include one student or 5 students on a specific message, it'll show up here for them. And then the student's replies here. And so I look at this and I see that the instructor sent lots of messages here that Sean didn't reply to. And without any context, that doesn't mean a lot to me. But as the instructor, I might be able to know what these messages are. I might be able to know whether that's an indicator of the fact that Sean maybe isn't responding and is struggling with the course because he's not responding. There are a whole myriad of things that I could use that information for if I had a little bit more context. But it's nice to be able to get a quick glance of the communication exchanges. Looking down at submissions again, just to see how Sean's doing. What we have here are whether these particular assignments were submitted on time, late, or missing. And so if I hover over, I can see that this is an introductions assignment, that it was due February 7th at the end of the day. And Sean submitted it February 1st. And you can see this line coming off to the left. And so even without hovering, I can just get a quick look at this because that line tells me how far in advance Sean submitted the assignment. And so let's see here. If I look at this one, for example, Sean just submitted it 2 days before it was due. And so the line's a little bit shorter compared to this one up here where Sean submitted it about 6 days before it was due. Similar to the sort of overall course view of grades, shows us how Sean is doing kind of compared to everyone else here. Again, the green dots are good scores, the yellow ones are fair, and the red here are poor scores. And so you just get to see Sean in the context of the rest of the course. This gray bar is still the range of the 25th to the 75th percentile of students. So students that were kind of in the middle, if you ordered them by how well they did by their grades.
And can we also mention too about this grading, the grading tool, that the scale that it's using on the left there is the total number of points that the assignments are worth. And you didn't mention this when we were looking at that course analytics overview, right, Brendan?
No, I did not mention that, but that's a good point, that it, not necessarily good or bad, but just worth keeping in mind that if it were a percentage, for example, you'd sort of get to compare assignments to assignment. But because it's sort of the raw points, let me go back here. Because I think that looking at the course as a whole, yeah, it's hard to compare sort of how people did on one assignment, this assignment compared to this assignment overall, because we're just looking at the raw points. This one looks like, oh, people didn't do very well, but that was because it was only out of 5 points, whereas this one is out of 50 points. Yes, that's just a good thing to keep in mind about comparing from assignment to assignment. Maybe isn't going to be the best, but it'll at least give you when I look at the range there of that 25th to 75th percentile, I can still look and see what's been difficult.
Cool. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah. So I think we got through all of the student view stuff. Was there anything else that you had to add about specific student view things, Sean?
I don't think so. I mean, we could mention the switching to from this visualize view to the grid view.
Yeah, so if for whatever reason you don't like the visualizations, I know the Canvas has been working on sort of accessibility and usability, with colors. Red and green can be difficult sometimes. That's why they have the shapes also in between the circles and the squares to help differentiate between those two things. But there is an option, rather than looking at the graphs, to just look at a grid view. It's all the same information, just a different way to look at it. And then I will mention, in terms of usability, as an instructor looking at this, I can quickly pull up all my students here and change student if I want that way, or I can just scroll through like this if I'm curious. So I don't have to back out and then click on a student's name to get back into this. I can just scroll through pretty easily. So we've looked at the course analytics. We've gotten down into the student view of analytics. Students can see this particular view of their own stuff. They can't see the whole course analytics, but they do have access to their own view here. Another cool thing that we'll go back to the homepage to get to is called an access report. And that gives us an idea of how students are engaging with particular pieces of content that are posted on our course, in our course. So go to people. Again, I'll choose a particular person. And then I'll come up here on the right to access report. And now I have one row for each particular piece of content in the course. And so here's an assignment. It looks like a discussion. And you can see that we have total times viewed, times participated, and then the last viewing. And again, similar to what I was saying earlier on about page views, it doesn't necessarily mean that they, read design a content page 27 times. It means that they went there 27 times. We don't really know what they're doing with it. It tells us that they're going there, but we just sort of have to keep that information in our minds. One other thing that's worth noting is that this only shows where a student has gone. If a student has not gone to view a particular piece of content, it won't show up on this access report. So you can see that it can be kind of long and unwieldy to try and find something. And so if I were looking, hey, did this particular student go look at the design a course or design a content page, I would probably just on a Mac, do Command F, on a PC, Windows, do Control F to pull up the little find icon and then say, just search for design. And that makes it a little bit easier for me to find what I'm looking for, since you can't sort the content here.
And I think we'll probably be honest and admit this is not a very well-designed page for really figuring out what students did or didn't do, since as Brendan mentioned, you can't sort it, and certain things are omitted if they're not there. So it is honestly kind of tough to go through here and really figure out, did a student do this one thing and how much time did they spend on it? So if you want to look at this and try and figure out, did a student really work hard to learn the content on this page, this isn't really a way to figure that out accurately.
Right. So I'll pop out of here. So now we've covered 3 of the areas. We've got the course analytics, the student analytics, and the access report. Fourth area that I'm sure you spend plenty of time in is the grades. And I just wanted to point out one really cool feature in here, where if I look at a particular assignment, for one, if I just click on it, it'll sort. So I can get a quick view this way also of, who was near the bottom, or if I click again, who's near the top. One feature that I love that I wanted to share that allows you to take some action on this is the message students who feature. And so again, if I just click on the little triangle that's right below one of these assignments, I can open that up and it gives me a few different options here. I can message students who haven't submitted yet, and you can see that it shows who is going to be on that message list. So right now, Kurt Wagner is the only student who hasn't submitted. If I open that up, I can say they haven't been graded, scored less than a certain amount, and I can put in whatever I would like to say here. So maybe students that scored 40 or less. And you can see that it pulled up those two students, and that it also added the 40 into the subject line automatically. And so if I change that to maybe 45, now you can see that it filled in the subject line and we had one more student here. Similarly, scored more than. And so that's just a really great feature to, again, quickly message some students in whatever way you see fit. But it's a nice way to filter and sort of get a group of students who are in a certain category, whether they scored more than a certain amount or less than a certain amount or haven't submitted yet. Maybe you want to send a reminder to students who haven't submitted something yet. So pop out of grades, go back home. I do just want to let you know that, let's see if I go down to settings, there is this area called course statistics. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where I don't find a whole lot of useful information there. Active students, total number of quizzes, total number of discussions. You can scroll through here and get similar metrics there. Knowing how much storage space you have left might be kind of nice. There's quite a bit of storage space. But in terms of sort of looking for that actionable insight, what am I going to do with this information? I'm sure you could find stuff to do. I just wanted to point it out so you know that it's there. And in case, I know I went through that kind of fast. So that was from home, you go down to settings. And then course statistics up here on the right. So I'll go back home again. The last thing that I want to point out is quiz statistics. So if I go into the quizzes here, you can choose a particular quiz, click through it all the way, and again, come up here on the right, you get quiz statistics. And it's going to give you sort of a general overall score breakdown for everyone in the course. But the feature that I love the most is this question-specific breakdown. Let me see if I can find one that's interesting here. People are doing well in this course. This must have been select all that are appropriate. One area where I've seen this really useful is when you only have one appropriate answer or one correct answer. And you see that the students were kind of split. So maybe half of the class answered the question correctly, but the other half answered the question incorrectly, but they all answered the same one. And so I might look at that and be like, oh, this is an indicator that there was some confusion around this particular question or this particular concept. So that's a place where I can maybe go back and remind students to review a particular piece of the course, or I might add something to my lecture about that. But yeah, this quiz summary is a really great place too.
And one area that we found that quiz summary was not especially useful, or maybe it was kind of more challenging to interpret the data, is if you have a quiz that you are pulling random questions from a quiz bank. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a quiz bank with 200 questions and each student is set to receive a random selection of 20 questions from that quiz bank, and you look at your quiz statistics, you'll see statistics for all 200 questions. But because only certain students got certain questions, it won't have the total. You may only have one student answering a question, so it says 100% of your students answered that question correctly because only one of them got it and one of them answered it. So it's a little tougher in that kind of a situation to see trends in particular types of questions, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I'll point out that you can pull this data down either on a student level or for a particular, on the item level, into a CSV format, comma separated value, which is a file that you can open up in Excel to do a little bit more analysis. But that was, as we were looking at a course, like Sean had mentioned, where it was questions that were randomly generated from a bank. It was just kind of overwhelming and unwieldy because it was hard to compare. But if you do want to pull these down, I just thought I'd note that these buttons are up here: student analysis and item analysis. So that kind of wraps up the general overview of some of the data and analytics tools that are available for instructors in Canvas. We are working to add some enhancements to that, looking at ways to provide some more data that will allow folks to sort of redesign their courses or make improvements in some way. So stay tuned for that. I did want to point out one really good resource, which is community.canvaslms.com. And so if you want more information on any of these particular components, you can just go to community.canvaslms.com and search for course analytics or quiz statistics or something like that. So that's kind of my bit, Sean.
Yeah, that's great. That was a really great overview of all those tools. And I think, so you can check out here, Brendan mentioned the Canvas community, which you can also, if you don't remember the URL for, you can search for Canvas community and you'll find it. These are our support channels. These are always available to you. Canvas support, which is actually through Canvas's company Instructure, is 24/7, and these are the ways that you can get in touch with them, or clicking the help button from within Canvas, which you'll find located in the navigation bar on the left. And then also our CU Online Help Desk, which we have run by some really diligent, hardworking, and smart student workers who are helping us. The hours for that are Monday through Friday. That's the phone number, and that's our email, so you can always get in touch with us there. And if you want to contact Brendan or myself directly with any questions, you can also reach us at our respective email addresses. And I think the last thing we would say about this is there's a lot of questions from people about analytics like this in a course and what you can use it for. And I think in general, we are trying to promote the idea that you can use these statistics to help you understand how well the content you have in your course is helping your students achieve the goals that you have, and maybe helping you see what content students are finding helpful and are accessing a lot, and what content maybe they're not. Looking at ways that your course is structured and due dates and things like that. And maybe there are some things about the scheduling or the structuring of the course that are affecting how much students are accessing things, or how well they're able to meet certain goals. So those are some of the big things I think that we hope that you'll be able to use this data for. It just, as Brendan said, to help you improve the design of your course and help your students succeed. So thanks so much for showing us all this stuff, Brendan, and we will see you all next time.
Yeah, thanks everybody.